I wasn't there the day Superman died. I didn't see Lois Lane weep over the man she loved. I did not share in the shock of the world as this man, this Fanboy, this last son of Krypton, left this existence. What did his death mean? If Superman could die, what chance did his ideals of truth, justice, and the American way stand? The media declared his death the end of an era, the end of hope. Some of my friends were in disbelief that DC could kill Superman, the Superman. Others cynically rejoiced at what they saw was an outdated symbol. Superman's death occurred around the time my love of comic books had faded. Years later, I would pick up the Death of Superman's novelization. By this time, Superman had returned and his four mystery replacements had all gone their separate ways. Status quo had returned to the DCU. Still, I wanted to know the story. I wonder if I was still involved in the drama of the DCU at the time. How would I have been affected? Would I have stared in disbelief at the comic book page and think, this cannot be happening? So what impact did Superman's death carry? Well, I look at it like this. When one of your friends decides that they're gonna start changing things up, like they start wearing a fedora or be a vest guy, and then drops it a few months later, then years later you see photos of them at that time and think, oh yeah, I remember that. It's kind of weird. The moment your friend decides to make that commitment, it seems impactful and meaningful. In retrospect, it was just a phase. Calling Superman's death a phase may sound callous, but in the end, everything did go back to normal. Is there much difference between the Superman before his death and the Superman of today? To have meaning, Superman needed to have changed in power level and personality, in his outlook on humanity. Instead, he died, he came back, like nothing happened. Without a long-lasting impact, it's just, for lack of a better word, feels like a phase he went through. Still, at the time, it was a pretty good story, and Superman does rule.
You're listening to Just Another Fanboy Presents The Death of Superman, episode number 1, The Beginning of the End. Hello and welcome to Just Another Fanboy Presents The Death of Superman. My name is Steven, and I'm the guy that's hosting this thing. And the voice you heard there at the top of this episode was Frank A. Rincon from the Half Hour Wasted podcast. You can find that show at hhwlod.com. Thank you, Frank, for our cold opening or introduction this week. And hey, if you want to submit your own cold opening talking about where you were when Superman died, well, we're looking for about 2 to 3 minutes. So make your recording and send the file to justanotherfanboy@gmail.com. And in fact, if you go out there and grab the episode, Where Were You When Superman Died, right here on this feed, you're going to get a lot more information in regard to what we're looking for those cold openings and how you can make it happen and submit it. All right. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the death of Superman and talk about the issue that started it all. Superman, Man of Steel, issue number 18. This was, of course, published by DC Comics. It sported a cover date of December of 1992, but went on sale this week in 1992, 30 years ago. The on sale date is listed over on Mike's Amazing World of Comics as October 13th, 1992. It had a cover price of $1 25. It was written by Louise Simonson, pencils by Jon Bogdanove, inks by Dennis Janke, letters by Bill Oakley, and the colorist was Glenn Whitmore. Now, all I'm going to be doing here each week is just giving you a rundown of what happened in the issue that is part of the Death of Superman storyline that landed during the week that this podcast episode comes out, but 30 years previous. I didn't take a lot of notes. Most of this is going to be all off the top of my head to make it easier for me to record these shows and get them out there for you to ensure that I hit, because it's important that I hit these weeks, that I hit these deadlines. Before we get into this issue, I should mention that whether or not you're reading the issue online, for example, you can get all of this through the DC Infinite Universe app. If you're reading along with me and you're using that to read these issues, then this issue number 18 of Superman the Man of Steel, opens a bit differently than the actual issue that was published. If you have the hard copy of the issue, which I do, I've got all of these. I'll be reading most of this through the website, through the app, through the DC Infinite Universe app, but I do have all these issues up in the attic. And the digital version here opens up with 4 pages that were not part of the original published issue. They're actual pages. These are actually pages from previous issues that were released the previous month. If you listen to episode 0, I talked about Man of Steel issue number 17, which was released on September 15th, 1992, and how the final page in that issue was made up of 4 panels. And in those 4 panels, the first 3, you see a gloved fist hammering away at a metal door, or a metal wall, at least. We don't know if it's a door or a wall. And there are some kind of metal coils wrapped around the arm that is attached to this fist. And then the 4th panel shows the outside of this wall, and it's unmarred, and you get this very barely audible clang. So something is inside or on the other side of this wall, and it's slamming its fist into the wall. And in that issue, number 17, you get 2 caption boxes. The first one is at the top of the page on panel 1. It says somewhere else. And then the last one is at the bottom of the page, and it says Doomsday is coming. Now, you get one of these pages at the end of the 4 issues from each of the 4 titles that preceded Man of Steel number 18. So you get this page in Man of Steel number 17 from, again, September 15th, 1992. You get it in the following week from Superman number 73 from September 22nd, 1992. This next one, again, 4 panels. It looks like the 4 panels were done by a different artist. So whoever was doing art chores for each one of these particular issues, they did their own version of these 4 panels. And again, for this one, the second time we see this, we get the gloved fist hammering on this wall. The steel coils that are wrapped around its arm have broken. The glove at the knuckle has torn open, and we see like bony protrusions, like almost claws coming out of its knuckles. And when we get to that 4th panel and we see the outside of the wall, we now see what appears to be 4 very tiny holes, and the sound effect of crink is a little bit louder. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're going to go through each one of these 4 pages, because again, if you're reading this digitally, they added these 4 pages to the beginning of Man of Steel issue number 18, because if you're on the app and you go to just the storyline, the Death of Superman, it gives you all the issues in order. And I guess so they don't include these 4 previous issues from the 4 titles the previous month. They don't want you to read through each of those just to get to these last pages. They stuck them here at the beginning of this issue. There's a difference, though. In the original Superman number 73 from September 22nd, 1992, that final page has the same text boxes that appeared in the Man of Steel 17. Somewhere else, and then Doomsday is coming. The only difference between the 2 pages from those issues is that, the art is different, and what's happening is different. But in the digital version, they actually changed the text. So for the digital version, the second page, which comes from Superman number 73, now says unrelentingly at the top, and then Doomsday is coming at the bottom. The third page comes from the Adventures of Superman number 496 from September 29th, 1992. And in the original version, the text again is the same from Man of Steel number 17. Again, we have a different artist, whoever the artist was on this issue. We have a different artist doing these 4 panels. But now we're seeing that the fist with its bony protrusions has created more damage on this wall, and the glove has ripped away even more. And in the final panel, we can actually see those 4 bony claws poking through the wall. The new text that they added to the digital version is that first text box that says unstoppably. And then the final of the 4 pages originally showed up in Action Comics number 683 from October 6th of 1992. In this version, again, 4 panels. The first 3 are the fist pounding away at the wall, but the wall has sustained even more damage. And in the final panel, the fist is actually coming through the wall. You've got the entire fist coming out of the wall. The text box up top in the original version said somewhere else. In the digital version says unbelievably. And then the final text box there at the bottom was different in the original issue, Action Comics 683. And they kept it for the digital version, and it says Doomsday is here. So that leads in seamlessly with what is the first page of Superman Man of Steel number 18. We're out in a meadow. You can hear the sound of this fist pounding against this metal wall. We don't know where it's coming from. It's just kind of ringing out through the meadow. Birds are flying in fear. A deer is running away in fear of the sound. Rocks are toppling over, and then we see the fist coming through the wall. We learn that wherever this is taking place, wherever this wall is, it's underground, because now we see the fist pounding away through the earth until this figure erupts from the ground. It's covered head to toe in green, like a green suit. Dark green. I don't know what you would actually call that color. I'm a little colorblind. Its face is entirely obscured from this suit, and it appears to be wearing some kind of, there's like 2, like a lens over each eye, the red lens. Now, the main story that's happening here in Man of Steel number 18 actually doesn't deal with this figure at all, who, in hindsight is Doomsday. I'm not going to try and read this. I'm not going to try to, as I'm talking about these issues as we move forward, I'm not going to try to pretend like this is my first time through these books. I did read this when it was coming out. I will be giving my own Where Was I When Superman Died? I will be opening up one of the issues with that, or one of the episodes with that myself. But I'm not going to go into that here. But I did read these issues as they were coming out, so I'm not going to pretend like I don't know who this thing is that's coming up out of the ground. It's Doomsday. Beyond that, I don't remember a lot about. I mean, I remember based on the years that have gone by where Doomsday came from and what Doomsday is all about, but I don't remember how much of that. I don't remember if they go through any of that during the whole Death of Superman arc, or if that came later. So I'm not going to talk about any of that until maybe later on down in the season when we get to certain points. Maybe I'll bring some of that up. But if I remember correctly from reading this back in the day, Doomsday is ultimately just a tool. It's a force of nature. We don't know why Doomsday is there, but the creature is, and somebody has to stop them. Well, again, in this issue, most of the issue is taken up with a story outside of what was going on with Doomsday. We get throughout the main story, we have these little scenes that take us back to what Doomsday is doing, but ultimately we're just kind of setting up what's going on with Superman at this point before the danger that is Doomsday, before that becomes apparent to Superman. Now, the title of this issue is listed as Doomsday Part 1. And the main story here is actually involving a group of creatures that they call underworlders. And I'll be honest, I had no idea who these dudes were when I first read through this back in the day. I did have to look up who these guys were. And according to DCFandom.com, the underworlders represent the epitome of science gone wrong, conceived and created in the laboratories of Project Cadmus. These men were created by the mad scientist Dabney Donovan. Considered failed examples of genetic cloning, they were exiled from Cadmus and forced to live beneath the sewers of Metropolis, where they earned the name the Underworlders. Now, we learn in this issue that among the Underworlders, there are also creatures, aliens from Warworld. I don't know if they were exiled. Warworld it ties into the character Mongol, who has gone up against Superman before. But when the story here involving the Underworlders open, we have a boy outside of a hardware store. He's looking up in the sky because Superman is flying by, and he's remembering, he's thinking to himself how awesome Superman is and how Superman has saved him twice and that Superman is his friend. He goes into the hardware store to buy glow-in-the-dark spray paint. We find out that these Underworlders, according to the boy, he apparently stumbled across something that they were doing in a previous issue. And in order to keep him quiet, they told him that they kidnapped his mom and threatens to kill her if this kid says anything to anybody about what they're doing. Well, the kid appears to live in a boys' home, an orphanage of some sort. So he can't for certain say, that his mom has been or has not been kidnapped because he doesn't see her all the time. But he knows that whatever day she may, she's supposed to come see him, she didn't. So he's decided to go underground into the sewers and try to rescue her. In the meantime, we have the Underworlders in a power plant there in Metropolis. They have kidnapped the workers there in the power plant. And some of these Underworlders are just homeless people that live in the sewers. Some of them are these genetic cloning gone wrong type creatures. They're led by a guy named Clawster, C-L-A-W, Clawster. And it's really kind of weird. I don't know who came up with the design of Doomsday. I think it was Dan Jurgens. And then who came up with the design of Clawster. But they're very similar. They're both big hulking creatures that look like they're made out of granite. Clawster looks more like the Thing when it comes to his rocky exterior. But both of them have bony protrusions that come out of their skin. Clawsters are a bit more, they're a bit bigger. He's got great big ones that come out of the top of his head and out of his chin and whatnot. And he's kind of a yellowish green color. But I found it kind of interesting reading this again that while he doesn't look like Doomsday, there's some obvious similarities between the two. And yet there's nothing, as far as I know, as far as I can remember, there's nothing that relates the two of them together. Well, so the boy goes down in the sewers. He's got this glow-in-the-dark spray paint with him because he knows that once he's down there, it's like a maze. So every time he comes to a fork in the road, basically, he can spray paint a little arrow on the wall so he can find his way out. In the meantime, we meet up with Lois Lane at the Daily Planet. She has got a note in her mailbox that says, "Send Superman to the basement under the West Side Power Station. Metropolis is in danger. A friend." Clark is not there. She knows at this point, if you remember, if you listen to my episode 0, Lois knows that Clark is Superman. And in fact, they are engaged to be married. Clark's not in at this point, and so she leaves a message for him on his computer, and then she tells a coworker as she's on the way out to check in on this, what's going on at the power station, the West Side Power Station. She hollers at a coworker that she's got to run, tell Clark there's a message for him on his computer. It's here we get back to this mysterious creature that we do know as Doomsday. We're out in the middle of a meadow. Doomsday is standing there. Again, he's still covered head to toe in this jumpsuit. The only thing that we can see of him is his hand, which, again, the glove busted open while he was hammering on the wall. He's still got a lot of these steel coils wrapped around him. And it looks as if these steel coils were used to tie his hands behind his back, but he's got the one arm free, and yet the other arm is still lashed with these steel coils behind his back. As Doomsday's standing there, birds are flying around, and he holds his hand open, and this cute little bird lands in his open palm, and he squishes it to death and then starts laughing, which is really kind of a horrific scene, because if you, for example, if you're reading this through the app and you're doing the guided view, so you're just going panel by panel, you don't know that the squishing of this bird is coming. It's all on the same page. So if you're reading the actual book, if you're reading full page view, it's right there. That doesn't come to as a surprise. But I'd have to imagine reading this panel by panel, you're like, okay, there's this big dude out in the middle of a field. Aw, a little bird landed in his hand, and he's looking at the bird. Oh my God, he squished it. And then Doomsday laughs. From there, we go back to the Daily Planet. Superman, who's been out flying around and on patrol, he lands on the roof, changes back into Clark. He goes into the offices, and Fran, the coworker, tells him that Lois left a message on his computer, and he goes to check it. And as he is pulling it up, the power goes out. And we learn quickly that this is because of the Underworlders who have taken over the power station. They now have control of Metropolis's electricity. Lois has made her way into the, underground into the basement area underneath the power station, and she is quickly captured by Closter. With Closter is a homeless guy by the name of Charlie, who's got a machine gun. Closter is being your typical villain, and he's kind of revealing some of their plan. He lets us know that the Underworlders have gotten war machines, and that they are going to use them to their benefit. Charlie mentions that Lois Lane would make a good hostage. Closter then fires back that the boss don't take prisoners. We don't know who the boss is. I assumed it was Closter, but there's apparently another boss that we don't know about. And I don't think we learn who it is in this issue, now that I think about it. But Closter decides to take Lois to the boss and see what happens. The boy who had gone down in the sewers to find his mom, he's hiding in some pipes, and he sees this happening. And based on the fact that Closter says they don't take prisoners, he realizes that they had lied to him. Well, they've either lied to him and didn't have his mom, or his mom is dead. We go back to Doomsday, who's standing before a tree that is about 3 times the thickness of Doomsday. This is an old, very large tree, and Doomsday punches it once, and it shatters into a million pieces, and he continues moving forward. And we see here, what we're seeing here is that wherever Doomsday is going, he's the type of creature that doesn't move around things. If he encounters something in his way, it gets destroyed. And we see this wreckage behind him, all these trees that are just nothing but stumps at this point. So yeah, this, I think this one page, which is just literally made up of 3 panels, tells us a lot about who this Doomsday character is. Just simply because rather than walk around the tree and walk around all the other trees, it just shatters them into a million pieces and just keeps going. Nothing is going to stop Doomsday from moving forward. All right, so we go back to the boy whose name is Keith. He uses the arrows to leave the sewers and get back out into the open air. And he takes his spray paint. He's thinking to himself how in Gotham City they have the big spotlight that they shine into the air to notify Batman that he is needed. And while he doesn't have a spotlight, he's standing on an outdoor basketball court, and he uses his spray paint to make the S shield across the entire court. And Superman does see it from the air because he's heading that way anyway, and flies down. And Keith tells him that the lady reporter has been captured by monsters. So then we get this double page spread of the Underworlders and their war machines. They have something that is burrowing like a big drill machine that's burrowing through the rock, and they're making their way to the surface, and they're going to invade the city. Superman, of course, is suddenly there, and he stops them. One of the underworlders named Rambeau, Rambeau, who he looks like a blue goat, which again is weird because I know that at some point during this series, during this storyline, we're going to meet a character by the name of Double X, who is an established character. But the death of Superman for me was the first time that I came across this character, and it's got a tie into Double X has his backstory is tied into Cadmus. The Underworlders are reject clones from Cadmus, and Double X looks somewhat like a blue goat who stands on two legs, and so does this Rambeau dude. Anyway, the Rambeau dude, Closter yells out, "Rambeau, diversion 7." And Rambeau grabs a grenade from his vest, says, "I got the grenade, Closter, but where do I put it?" Superman runs by at super speed, grabs the grenade, and shoves it into Closter's mouth. The grenade explodes while it's still in his mouth, and Closter, as he's falling unconscious, says, "Good thing Closter invulnerable," and then he's out like a light. The two panels where the grenade blows up and then we see him start to fall, very, very well done, very kind of Looney Tunes, and really enjoyed those two panels. So Superman makes quick work of the Underworlders. He recognizes these war machines as Warworld designs. And he says he's thinking to himself that he fears that the War World escapees are behind this. We don't really get a lot more information than that. But apparently, to me, that means that there were some aliens from War World who escaped. And we do see one of them here because Superman yells at the guy, "Come back here, War Worlder," which is a hard thing to say. War Worlder. He snatches up the alien, and the alien tells him that Lois has been taken by Charlie down the East Tunnel, and that by now she is dead. From there, we get another page with Doomsday, who has come to a highway with an overpass, and he is standing there with cars coming at him. He's under the overpass. He still has the one arm lashed behind his back, and he reaches out and grabs one of the overpass supports and pulls the overpass down atop all these cars, which I'm assuming means that a number of people have now died. And the whole time, Doomsday is laughing. This is just 3 panels here. The first panel, basically he's stepping out into this highway, notices the cars, kind of goes, huh? Pulls the overpass down on him, and is just standing there amongst the wreckage and ruin and death, and is laughing. So we get back to Superman and Lois. Superman comes crashing through this wall into the room where Charlie, the homeless human guy, has Lois hostage. He's got a gun in his hand. As Superman comes through the wall, he basically grabs the gun out of Charlie's hand, and he's getting ready to punch Charlie in the face, and Lois stops him because we learn that the note that Lois got at the beginning of the issue actually came from Charlie. Charlie is an informant, and he's undercover with the Warworlders and the Underworlders, and he's the one that warned Lois that they were all up to no good. And so we learn here that these Underworlders that were, Closter and his crew that were trying to invade Metropolis, they don't speak for all the Underworlders. They are kind of a small, violent faction among the Underworlders, and those that want peace end up taking the invaders as prisoners, and they're leading them off. And Lois tries to get Charlie to come back with her and come work for the paper. Charlie doesn't want to. He wants to stay. And so she basically offers him the job as the Underworld correspondent, and he says, deal. The issue ends. We're still out on the highway. It's nighttime at this point. There's a big rig that looks exactly like Optimus Prime rolling down the highway. When it catches Doomsday in its headlights, the driver honks the horn. Hey, buddy, get out of the way. And Doomsday punches the rig. The rig explodes. The rig and Doomsday are surrounded by fire. We're assuming now that this man has perished. Doomsday is laughing There's another truck driver who witnesses this, so he gets on his CB to radio the state troopers. And on our final panel, we've got a guy who's in a room with surveillance equipment of some sort, a monitoring station, and he hears this cry for help from this truck driver, telling the state troopers that a big monster flipped over this rig with one hand tied behind its back, and that the monster is as big as a friggin' house, and that he's heading east. And this guy who is listening to this says, "Hello, what have we here? Now this sounds like a job for the Justice League," and we see that it's continued next week in Justice League number 60. Good Lord, this lettering is horrible. 69. Now I know, because I was reading Justice League at this point, that this is Oberon, who is basically Mr. Miracle's manager. This is, however, the point during the Justice League. It's the Bwahaha era, as they call it. But Giffen and Maguire and all they're no longer part of the book. I think Jurgens is doing the Justice League. I'm not sure if he's also doing art. But this will be continued in Justice League America 69 and Superman number 74, which will be on sale next week, 30 years ago. So that is the first chapter, the first issue in our Death of Superman storyline. And I think it kicked off rather well. We get a very good idea of this monster that we're dealing with. It hasn't had a name yet. We know that the chapter is called Doomsday Part 1, but we don't, as a reader reading this for the first time, the creature has not been named officially as Doomsday. However, while the internet wasn't really a thing at the time, you did have stuff like Wizard Magazine and, of course, company ads within other books. And I'm fairly certain I'm fairly certain that they in one of these, like in an interview or in a preview or an ad or something talking about the Death of Superman, that they do name this creature as Doomsday. So if you were up to date on stuff back then you know that this creature is called Doomsday. However, I do remember that we don't know what Doomsday looks like at this point, because I remember thinking that this is what Doomsday looks like. He wears this full body suit with these red goggles, and it's not until later that, during his fight with Superman, because it's no secret. I mean, I don't think I'm spoiling anything. Obviously, it's called the Death of Superman. It's as he's fighting Doomsday that is what takes Superman's life. And it's during their fight that this overall bodysuit, these coveralls, come off of Doomsday, and we see the creature in its true form. And I do remember being very disappointed in the way Doomsday looks. I have since gotten over that over the past 30 years. I'm a big fan of the way Doomsday looks, but I remember at the time when we got to that point thinking how he looked so much cooler when he was just wearing the coveralls with the red goggles, and was kind of upset, internally. It's like, I wish they would have just kept it that way because he looks so much better. But again, I have since changed my mind. I don't know that there's much more I want to say about this. I think it's a very good first issue for this storyline, because we are introduced to the creature that will eventually end Superman's life. We don't know anything about this creature except for the fact that nothing is going to stand in its way. Anything that gets in this creature's way, even a freaking little bird flying in its path, is destroyed. And we know that the Justice League is going to get involved at some point. Superman at this point doesn't know that Doomsday is out there, but we know that eventually the two are going to clash. The art in this issue is a lot of fun. Jon Bogdanove is not one of my favorites, but I do enjoy his art style. It's a little bit different compared to the traditional look of a lot of the comics at this time. We got to remember, this is 92, and guys like Liefeld and McFarlane were really they've made a name for themselves at this point. We've started to see a lot of art straying from that traditional DC Marvel house style. I mean, it's not unknown for artists to deviate from that house style, because in the 80s, of course, we had guys like Bill Sienkiewicz, who did rather start out very traditional looking and eventually has this great sketchy, kinetic, all over the place style. So it's not like seeing something different was just a crazy thing to see back then, but it was starting to become more common for art to stray from that traditional format, from that traditional look. But yeah, again, there's really not much more I want to say. Not a lot of in-depth insight into this book, and not a lot of big secrets being revealed. Not a lot of there's really, I mean, when it comes down to it, the whole first arc, the first chapter in the death of Superman is it's not all that deep, and we're going to see that as we go forward. And in fact, leading up to the issue in which Superman dies, what we're going to see is the number of panels on each page. I mean, right now, on average, we have about 4 to 5 panels per page in this issue. I don't know, flipping through it real quick, I don't think we have any that have more than 5. And the fewest number of panels, other than there was a 2-page splash, the fewer number of panels is 3. As we continue until the issue in which Superman dies, which is issue number, Superman number 75, the number of panels per page as each issue progresses will lessen until that issue 75 of Superman, every page is a splash page. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember noticing that back then. It's something I came across 10 years later or so as I was reading about the death of Superman, and somebody pointed that out, and my mind was freaking blown. But I'm sure we'll talk about that as we move forward. But again, the average number of panels per page in this issue is about 4 to 5. But again, big fan of the art here. Jon Bogdanove, again, is not on my list of like favorite artists of all time. But I think when it comes to the 4 Superman titles that were coming out weekly at this time, that the death of Superman goes through, his is probably my second favorite as far as the art. It's definitely the most unique looking art from what I recall. He does kind of have that. It's like he almost has that image flair that guys like Liefeld and McFarlane have. You know, Jim Lee, and he does lean. He's almost like he's got that traditional house style with a bit of a McFarlane flair to it, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed the moment where Superman is about to punch Charlie in the face because Lois, who still has her hands tied behind her back, she stops Clark/Superman by kicking him squarely in the butt. And Superman has this look on his face as he's being kicked in the butt. Superman's got his back to the reader. And this is a great example of what I love about Jon Bogdanove's art. Because as she's kicking him in the butt, he actually has the cape rising up and bunching around her foot. And it's a really good page. He draws Superman very bulky. Superman is a big bodybuilder type figure in Jon Bogdanove's issues. That I also find that rather interesting at this time because artists are really, it's becoming more common to stray from that, house style. Superman's body type changes throughout all 4 of these titles, which I find very interesting. But his body style in Man of Steel, the Jon Bogdanove body style, is probably the more stylized throughout the 4 issues, and he's definitely the bulkiest of the versions of Superman that we get. But yeah, off to a good start. Really excited to be reading this again. Next week, we'll be looking at that issue of Justice League and Justice League 69 and Superman number 74, because those are the issues that were released next week, 30 years ago, October 20th, 1992. And so I hope you come back for that. Now, a bit of a warning. I talked about this a bit in issue 0, but as I'm looking at the schedule of episodes that are coming up, when we get to the week after episode 9, that week between Thursday, December the 1st of 92, between the week of December the 1st, 92, and the week of December 15th, 92, that week in between, there were no issues released that were part of the Death of Superman storyline. So as it stands, there's no episode planned for that week. So what I'd like to do, because we'll have 9 episodes out by that point, I'd like to put together a feedback episode if I could. But that all depends on y'all. So start thinking about that as we progress through these episodes. You don't have to send me anything now. We're only 1 episode in. But if you have your thoughts on the series as a whole, feel free to send that to me at justanotherfanboy@gmail.com. If you want to be included as an episode opener, again, record those thoughts. If you have your own way of recording, you can email them to me at justanotherfanboy@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can use the voice line 785-318-6673. The number will be in the show notes, and leave a voicemail. You can also use that number to text me if you want, if you want to be part of the feedback episode. But if you're going to leave me a voicemail and it's going to be something to be included, where were you when Superman died, or what does the death of Superman mean to you? If you want to be included in an episode opening, again, if you're using the voicemail, let me know who you are. Let me know how you want to be attributed in the episode, and just let me know that that's what you're doing here. Otherwise, you can do that, in an email if you record it yourself and send it to me in an email. Wow, I'm rambling. I'm really stretching this out longer than it really needs to be. So I'm just going to let y'all go. We'll talk again next week as we move forward with the Death of Superman. Bye.